That's right. You know right. Yeah, but we'd be having all kind of complaints. It'd be calling 910-1.
A little air conditioning. This
We
one's
need
been
some
in
in
there
here. Here is
Wow.
okay. Let's see. She's sitting down, so let's go here. Whereas, okay, we'll back up now. Yeah.
What'd you say? You said that name? Big C. Big C. Big C. Yeah, that's right. First come, first served.
It's a lot more comfortable sitting in this chair.
Yeah, that's right.
So is that 376 the same as one we passed on identity theft?
I don't know how similar it is, but I guess for what? Yes, 376. Just the same thing as the Turner's bill. Just a companion bill. No. In case something happens to the other one, I suppose we just need to move it along. Maybe. We'll tee it up for them if they want it. Don, did we get a confirmation from Senator Schaefer? Did we get a confirmation from Senator Schaefer that he was done? Okay. I'll give him just a couple of minutes. I didn't want to start. Have him sit here. Could you check with his office and see if he's coming or if somebody is? And we'll, I never met him. I was scared to death I wouldn't run. You see Blake's face? I told him to go. They get more.
Is he got anybody against him? Did you get the same guy running against you again?
I tell you, I'm getting on up about this retirement thing we voted on.
Did you see what Dominic wrote on it? We need to get his comments on it. He did a good job.
It's hard to get around though that $600,000. I thought it was fully funded. I didn't know there was tax dollars involved. It's my own fault. I should have been more attentive. It's just hard to explain to people. Let's see if I can clean some of this up before we get started. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. It's 3 o'clock. we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got two bills. Again, we're going to be having just a hearing only today to have the two bills explained. I won't comment on any of the bills. I'll let the authors, but you may see a similarity between one you've already seen. We'll be hearing Senate Bill 376 and Senate Bill 358. At this time, I'll ask Chairman Nix to open us up, a word of prayer, and we'll get started. Thank you.
Let's pray. Lord, we're indeed grateful to you for the blessings you give to us. Father, we just pray that you would come and give us your wisdom and knowledge and understanding as we look at these measures, and that we would do the things that would be pleasing to you. In Christ's name, amen.
Thanks, sir. Okay, I believe I saw Senator Rhett come in. Senator, if you'll come up to the podium and explain your bill. If there's anybody who wishes to, well, I'll tell you what, we'll skip sign-up sheet and we'll just let you, if anybody wants to comment on the bill when Senator Rhett's finished and the committee's through with their questions, we'll take public comment at that time. Senator Rhett, if you're ready, go ahead and tell us about Senate Bill 358.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow colleagues, friends, and y'all. Today I'm talking with you about Senate Bill 358. Basically what the bill does is it provides for the creation of banking improvement zones to promote the establishment of banks in underserved areas. This bill provides for the creation of banking improvement zones. The Department of Community Affairs may designate these zones within the jurisdiction of a local government to encourage the establishment of branches or representative offices of a bank in areas that are underserved by banking services. In evaluating an application to create a banking improvement zone, the Department of Community Affairs will consider the following: the location, number, and proximity of sites where the banking services are available, consumer needs for banking services, the economic vitality and local credit needs of the local government in the proposed zone, the existing commercial development in the proposed zone, and the impact additional banking services would have on potential economic development in the proposed zone. After the banking improvement zone is approved, the local governments may designate by resolution or ordinance a bank to be located within the zone as the depository for the local government's funds. This resolution or ordinance will also designate a fixed interest rate that is below the posted 2-year certificate of deposit rate at the bank, subject to an agreement between the local government and the banks. This will help pay for the cost of opening the bank in the area. Before the banking improvement zone can be created, the Department of Community Affairs must make a determination as to whether the potential gains from the below rate interest agreement can be considered ample consideration for substantial public benefit in compliance with the gratuity clause. Basically, there's a gratuity clause where the government can't give a business a gift. But in this bill here, we waive that so that once that happened and the benefits, the public benefits outweighed, because you have people who in a number of communities don't have banking services. They have to go to a check cashing place and pay a fee, and then the money goes out of the community. Or if they need a loan, they have to go to a title place and get an exorbitant loan. But by having these banks in the area in conjunction with a tax allocation district or a community improvement district, it helps to provide the opportunity for people to build up good credit with the bank, and also spurs economic development in the community because the money starts to turn over. This bill was reviewed by the Commissioner of the Department of Banking and Finance, Mr. Hagler, and his lawyer, and they gave it his approval. It passed through the Georgia Senate unanimously. I don't think there was a vote against it. And also, I was encouraged to bring this forth by the chairman of the Cobb County Commissioners, Mike Boyce. If anybody have any questions, I'm available to answer or try my best.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the, I think we've already got a couple of customers. That'll be Representative Elam.
No. No credit unions.
Conditions very restricted.
Thank you.
Right. I've been down that road before.
Okay. May I follow?
But the no credit unions are involved in this.
Okay, and obviously this is being driven by our local governments,
Yes, sir.
school board, county commission, city commissions. I guess which is coming first, the cart or the horse here? Are these local elected officials going to push the fact that pass a ordinance that, hey, we're going to put money into this bank if it comes, or would it be vice versa? I didn't.
Well, they make an agreement between each other, whereas if they would open a bank in order to cover the cost to operate in a brick and mortar bank, they would give them that below money market rate on the deposits, and then that would pay for it. But it's agreement, and it's nothing mandated here. It's just, it can happen in the inner city, it can happen in the rural area where if the local government and the bank come to an agreement to try and set up a banking system, try and regenerate a community, they make that agreement together.
So my question would be, in the end, I mean, let's say what we hope happens in these particular areas are very prosperous at some point. I mean, at what point does this, I won't say the word dissolve, but becomes unnecessary? Is there an exit strategy, I guess, when we have the prosperity that we would hope?
As, I'm sorry, pardon me.
No, that's, you know, at what point is there an exit strategy? Is there an exit strategy? How does that transition?
Well, it's usually a 2-year deal, and they review it every 2 years. And as business, you know, they start, like I said, if you have a tax allocation district and you bring a business in and you start building up customers' credit rating and where they can get auto loans and mortgage. Once the bank becomes profitable, they will review it every 2 years, and then at that point decide whether or not they will continue the below money market rate, because now the bank is self-sufficient and can pay for itself.
Is that in the bill for every 2 years? I didn't.
Well, it's agreement between the bank and the local government.
So they have that latitude at that point.
Right. Yes, sir.
I don't know if we're going to hear from the banking department. I don't know that, I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to really study your bill before you came. That's why we're here. Going through it, trying to determine, you've got the Department of Community Affairs on the one hand with some type of regulatory responsibility here, but we certainly want our lending institutions, for our banking department to have full authority. There's not any conflict there between these two departments. That would change anything of the banking department's regulatory authority over any bank. Is that true? What did I just say?
Right.
It doesn't change the regulatory stance of the
No,
banking
sir.
department over any banking institution in favor of the Department of Community Affairs, except in creating a zone.
Right, that's correct.
I'm not sure. We didn't do a sign-up sheet, but he author of the bill says no. We'll hold that for right now. And we'll move on to Representative Alexander. Do you have a question?
I did. And it may be the question that you just asked about This is specifically for zoning, to have it zoned, not necessarily that there will be banks, but that, because I know a lot of banks are closed. So is it just so that this is for underserved areas for
Underserved
zones?
areas.
Okay,
And they call it banking improvement zone, but it's for underserved areas. I used to work here in Atlanta off of Joseph E. Boone and what used to be Bankhead. And I remember we had a function where we had a back-to-school jam at the school. And they wanted me to go get some hot dogs and hamburgers because we were running short, and to stop by the bank. By the time I found a grocery store in the bank, I was, I'm from Cobb County, Marietta. I was in Cobb County, and I called them back and I said, well, I'll come back tomorrow. So basically, it's areas like that that are underserved, and it's just a way to Genesis. And then this is not in an isolation, it's in part of their project to rebuild an area and bring in banking services as a Genesis to spur economic development and help people to build credit, build within the bank, and help money to start turning around in the community instead of going out. And that's part of an overall plan to try. Just like basically right here with my chairman of the commissioner in South Cobb around the Six Flags area, there's banking and food deserts, but they've set up a tax allocation district, and what they want to do is try and bring a bank into the area to help try and be a Genesis to turn things around, not only just with businesses, but also build up consumers' ability to have good credit and have serviceable loans. Because if you want a loan now, you have to go to a title place, and the interest rates, if you should come up late on your payment, are exorbitant. So it just helps another way for people to build up good credit within a bank.
thank you.
It's a benign bill. It's not mandatory. It's not mandating anything, but it's just encouraging banks as an incentive. Hey, could you come in this community? We have plans to try and redevelop this area. We have the right mechanisms in place, but it would be nice to have a bank to come in there. So not only are we building up the community, but we're building up the residents in the area, their ability to have enough credit to apply for an auto loan someday or a small loan. But they have to start somewhere. So it's a benign bill.
Do you have a question, Representative Fraser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you for that example you just gave of Cobb County, but I'm in rural Georgia, and I have approximately 2 banks right now in Burke County, and they're in competition with each other. So tell me, how will this help my rural towns like Keysville and Waynesboro and areas like that?
I'm not familiar with the economic layout or geographical area per se, but any area, it could be urban or rural, any area where it's just like I traveled this summer. I was one of the centers on the Lieutenant Governor's Healthcare Task Force. And we traveled to some parts in the area where there may be one hospital for several counties. Upon further investigation, in some areas, the same situation exists with banks. So for areas who are underserved, it could be rural or urban. If you set this up as an agreement with the local government and the bank to have them open up a branch, so also let me add to this, people sometimes had to drive 60, 70 miles to get to a doctor. And if you have areas like that that are underserved with banking services, now they have to leave their local area and go somewhere else and spend their money, cash their check, do their financial work. And while they're there, they're probably eating, spending money at the restaurants and the clothing store. But then when they come back home to their community, they hadn't spent a dime. But this would at least try to encourage, and it could be urban or rural areas, to have the mechanism where at least there's a genesis so that money is starting to turn around in the community 2, 3, or 4 times before it goes out. I remember when I was a kid, my father, he had several jobs, and but he used to explain to me, he said, look, see here, I work in the barber shop, you pay the barber the money, He takes the money, go over next door to the grocery store. They take the money and go over next door to the hardware store. Then that person take the money and put it in church. But it turns over several times before it leaves the community. Plus, they're cashing, they have building up a good credit rating with the bank because they go there to cash the check or direct deposit. So that's basically what it does.
Thank you.
Mhm. If I may say, I don't know if y'all have it in your package, but I brought up to your office a folder.
Yeah, we've got it.
Okay.
Yeah, we were looking through it. I believe Representative Ridley has a question if his
Yes.
microphone's on.
Mr. Senator, I've been in banking for about 12 years and helped start 2 or 3 of them, so I'm not real sure about how you're doing about this, because the normal way of doing it, you got to get guys together, raise capital, and then you go through the state banking department and you form a bank that way. Now, the way you're talking about doing it, you're not going to have a board of directors. You're not. How's the OCC going to ever even certify you have a bank? And usually the 2-year deal that you're talking about is usually a loan production office that they'll let you start first until you build up enough capital to turn it over into a full service bank. So I'm a little bit confused about.
There's no shortcuts here. You go through the same procedure, but you try and offer them an incentive to work with you. That's all this is doing.
Offer the bank an incentive to work with you?
Right, because to come into the area because of the below money market rate that will justify the cost of opening the bank in the area. But you go through the same procedures, no shortcuts here.
Okay.
Did you want to ask a question, Representative Deffinbaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator Wright. I have 2 questions, if I might ask them. Who makes up these zones, and are they the same zone in every area of the state?
Well, we call it a zone, but it's basically, that's just the title, but it depends on the geographical area that's underserved, and it's agreement between a bank and the local entity, the local government, whether it's municipal or county. They decide which areas that they want to try and make this agreement with and make it happen.
So each area of the state could be different that wanted to use this.
Basically, it's the same formula. It's just if they're underserved and need banking support for the community.
Means, you know, X and Y are the same, but you're saying it could be different for Marietta area, where you say you're from, or up where I am, Dade County, where there's, you know, it's different.
Not necessarily. If you don't have banking services and you have to go outside your community to take care of your banking needs, and then you end up, instead of taking care of your banking needs in your own area, it's the same scenario. You need banking services. And if you don't have it, that means right now you have to travel several miles to get to a bank, whereas right now in your community you have a bank where people can start building up credit. You know, one of the jobs I had here in Atlanta, before I came to the Senate, I worked at the City of Refuge with homeless and battered women in the shelter. And my job, I took time out, I had a curriculum, and one part of the curriculum I taught them was how to personal finance, how to manage a budget, how the difference between needs and wants spending, how to handle a checkbook. And once they finished my class, we went to the local bank in the area. I think the name was Capital Bank. And then I gave them a certificate. And when they went there, once we helped them get a job, they were able to open up a bank account in the community. So now we have an institution within the community where we're helping people build up credit and build up a relationship with the bank. And so it's pretty much, the scenario's not much different. If you're underserved in banking, all we're trying to do is, in conjunction with a larger plan of redevelopment of an area, just trying to provide banking services to people underserved.
And then the second question I have is that if a existing bank would be in the far corner of this, but they were still in the zone, would they be given the same benefits?
Sure. I mean, I don't see a problem with that. First of all, if there's already a bank providing services in the area, then there would be no need for it. But if another bank in another wants to participate in an underserved area, that would be negotiated between them and the local municipality or the county government.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of unknowns here. But thank you very much.
Any other question for the author? Yeah.
Having served on the school board, obviously it's at the board's wishes as to where you put these funds. And we could move them. I'm just concerned if you've developed this bank predicated on those, $1 million of funds, which would not be unusual for a school system to be operating on, and you pull those funds, would that devastate the bank? Just
No, we're not pulling funds from banks. If it's an area that's underserved, that's where the funds go to try and set up that bank. But we're not dealing with competing interests here, These are banks who want to work together with the government, and it could be an existing bank. If it's in the area, that's fine. But if not, we make this offer to try and work together.
Oh. I about didn't see you, Representative Dickey. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want, for information purposes, I've been working on a similar bill for grocery stores. My county actually has 2 banks, but no grocery stores. So maybe we could piggyback and have a branch bank in a grocery store. I could get one of these underserved desert areas in my rural Georgia county. So thank you.
There are a number of banks, like you said, at grocery stores who do have banks in them, so you take care of 2 birds, 1 stone. But if you read the article I put in where they've done this in areas like Texas and New York, you can see it's been very successful. If you look in the folder and read the article, this is not an anomaly. This has been done in more than one place and been tried and proven.
Okay.
Just like I mentioned traveling with healthcare, we've had that rural healthcare tax break to try and bring businesses in. Have people donate to try and keep hospitals solvent. That's the same thing with this. Just try and bring banks into the area where people are underserved, where now they don't not only have to drive 50 miles to go to a doctor, they also don't have to drive 50 miles to go to a bank.
Senator Rhett, thank you. I believe that's all the questions for you. Thank you for your time. Is there anybody from the audience who wishes to be heard on Senate Bill 358? We were going to subpoena him anyway, so here he comes.
Chairman Morris, Bo Fears from the Department of Banking and Finance. A question was raised as to whether or not this would create a conflict between the Department of Banking and Finance and the Department of Community Affairs. How I understand the bill, Department of Community Affairs will simply designate a geographic area as a banking improvement zone, and if a bank then decides to locate or relocate there, open a branch, open a representative office, then they will have the ability to take preferential terms on deposits, public deposits they take. But the regulatory authority of the Department of Banking...
Explain those deposits again, the preferential treatment, so the committee knows exactly what type of deposits you're talking about.
So public deposits.
Public deposits.
Public deposits, so either local or state government, and so those would have to be approved by the state. So a bank has to be approved by the State Depository Board to take public deposits. And if they are approved, then, as I understand it, what this bill would provide is that theoretically, the bank could pay a lower interest rate on those public deposits, and that is the incentive that would be offered to them. But it doesn't impose any sort of, it doesn't impact the department's ability to regulate vis-a-vis chartering, approving branches, nor the OCC.
Okay.
I know I'm not supposed to take any questions, but
Well,
if there are any, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I'm thinking that that's all that I was really concerned about was the regulatory when they started talking about the rates. But I want to make sure the committee understood what rates we're talking about. We're talking about the ones on public deposits.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I haven't seen either Senator Schaefer, Kurt, Albers, Thompson, or Heath here. So I suppose Senate Bill 376 will be postponed for another day and time. So this meeting's adjourned. Thank you for your questions.